I know there were a lot of people concerned with how this movie might turn out, given that it was about a princess, which is more common with Disney than Pixar, and it was also seemingly a feministic movie, which a lot of people have grown a bit tired of. Well, before I say anything else, I'll say this: the princess thing, barely noticeable. And this movie is not about feminism. This movie is about pride and family, especially family, and most notably the relationship between Merida and her mother. Merida has reached an age where she is expected to marry and take on her role as queen. She must choose one of the firstborn of the 3 adjoining tribes, as is tradition. Merida is not ready to get married and indeed feels like she may never be ready. She's more interested in her archery and is tired of her mother running every aspect of her life. After she tricks her way into the trial she's supposed to set to decide who will marry her, she gets into a fight with her mother where both of them say and do things they probably shouldn't. Merida runs off to the forest where she encounters the will-o'-the-wisps, which are said to lead you to your fate. She follows them to a witch's cottage and asks for a spell to change her fate by changing her mother. The witch agrees, but the spell she gives her winds up not working the way Merida expects, and she has to fix it before it becomes permanent. So the big question is this up to Pixar's generally excellent standards? And I'll give you the quick answer. No, it is not. For a variety of reasons, this does not feel like it's up to par with movies like Up, WALL-E, and Toy Story 3. One reason is that even Pixar's bad movies are wildly imaginative. I mentioned in the Real vs. Real with Ratatouille that half of their premises sound completely insane out loud, but somehow Pixar makes it work. While Brave does have 1 or 2 surprises, which I do not intend to spoil here, in case some people aren't already aware of them, the actual premise is fairly standard and surprisingly average. With most Pixar movies, you can say with certainty that you've never seen something like this before. And again, while there is 1 or 2 things in this film that are kinda different, most of it will remind you of stories that have already been done several times over. This is disappointing, and given that the majority of the movies being released this year look both very promising and quite unique, it is unlikely that Brave will hold that #1 spot that Pixar is so accustomed to. It does start off strongly. There was a moment toward the beginning where I would have given this movie a solid 10 because I was instantly in love with the setting. But as the movie went on, my score did slowly begin to drop, and about halfway through I had to readjust my opinion slightly and ask myself, do I judge this movie based on what I wanted to see, or do I judge it based on what's there? Ultimately, I decided to judge the movie based on what's there, and on that note, it is pretty damn good. Aesthetically, Brave is gorgeous. The film is beautifully animated, and while I can't honestly say I noticed anything special with the 3D, I do suggest that it be experienced in theaters. The soundtrack is also really good. It is very rare for me to notice music in a movie unless it's really good or really bad. The soundtrack is lovely and fits the tone of the film perfectly. Apart from the way it looks and the way it sounds, I'd say that the thing that stands out most in Brave are the characters, because while the plot may be slightly below Pixar's standards, the characters are, as is generally the case, fantastic. Merida herself is likable while also being believable as a teenager. She has an endearing personality but makes a lot of mistakes, and it's never suggested that those mistakes are not entirely her fault. She's stubborn and way too prideful, but at least is being proactive and is trying to fix things and does learn from her mistakes in the end. And I freaking love her hair. Merida's mother, Eleanor, is surprisingly likable. It would have been easy of them to just make her the strict mom who needs to let her daughter go and is overly controlling. But honestly, from the very beginning, both Merida and Eleanor are obviously in a situation that neither of them know how to resolve. There's a scene right before the archery trial where Merida is getting into that dress, where it's obvious that Eleanor wants to say something to Merida, and Merida really wants her to, and neither of them can say what they want to. It's stuff like this that makes this relationship believable and a lot more sophisticated than the usual rebellious teenager and mom that can't see things from daughter's perspective. Throughout the film, Eleanor actually really grew on me, and despite the fact that I did like Merida, I think her mom is probably the stronger female character. King Fergus is hilarious, and every moment spent with him and the other three kings are usually a riot, as it's fun to see them all butting heads. The triplets are also a lot of fun, as are the three princes, all of whom have their own unique personalities. And don't get me wrong, the story is not bad. I wouldn't even go so far as to say that it's anywhere close to average. There's really nothing wrong with this movie apart from the fact that it's not quite what everyone expected from Pixar. In any other situation, it would probably be getting a lot of praise, because while the plot does seem a bit more generic than what might otherwise be the case, it's at least handled with style. The relationships in the film are believable, and plot twists are surprising, or at least well written enough to be appreciated. If you take anything away from this review, let it be that this movie is good and well worth your time. So, in closing, if you can get past your expectations and accept it for the fun and genuine film that it is, Brave will not disappoint.
If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?